Welcome to Launch Code, a premier business podcast, starring Evan Hafer, Matt Best, and Jared Taylor.
Welcome to Launch Code San Antonio. We are somewhat moved in. We don't have the set build yet because we don't have a building yet. Hopefully that'll change shortly. But as of this week, Matthew, and Evan are traveling all over the country doing cool coffee things. And I'm back here holding down the fort in good old San Antonio. Now, as a lot of you might know, not only did we just relocate to San Antonio, Texas as our new headquarters, but another very popular veteran-owned company has also recently relocated, which would be Gruntstyle. And joining me today is Gruntstyle's Chief Operating Officer, Tim Jensen. Hello, Tim.
Well, hello, JT. Thanks for having me on the show, man. And welcome to San Antonio.
Thank you. You know, you've been here for a good 5 months now, so you've got the lay of the land a little better than I do.
Trying. It is a beautiful place. Coming from Chicago, I have to say that it's still snowing up there, and it has been in the 80s and 90s down here, which is unbelievable.
It's such a different thing for the psychology. Like waking up every morning to sun and blue skies has just been like great. It's almost like, ooh, happy.
Absolutely. Sitting on the deck, I was just saying this morning, sitting on my back deck, drinking some coffee and smoking a couple cigarettes, 70 degrees in the morning. I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
So it's exciting because we've never had anybody from your organization on any of our shows, but we're going to start now that we're neighbors. Number two, looking forward to the future, we're planning on doing a giant special where we bring in Tyler, the owner of Nine Line, Nick, the owner of Ranger Up, myself, Matt, Evan, you, and Dan Elric to do a whole Launch Code special on the last 5 years in veteran industry. So bringing everybody in that has been part of this crazy path, and telling all of our stories. But today I want to dive deep into your history in the Marine Corps. What happened with you when you transitioned out and became a civilian? And then how did you meet Dan, and what was the beginning of Gruntstyle like?
Oh, man, that's a walk back through time. And, just to touch a little bit on it, thinking back of it, 5 years, all of us operating in this space has been absolutely incredible. Just to see where the entire industry has gone is, a testament to everybody's hard work.
And really, if you take it back to 2012, like that was like the micro stages of everybody except for Ranger Up. Ranger Up had been operating, they had a building at least, but 2012, 2013, we're all doing this out of garages and the back of trucks and everything like that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible. I remember those first days. I mean, the production office was not even the size of your apartment here, and making shirts in there and then going into all the following stages, and then watching all the other businesses come around and doing the same exact thing, growing at the same rate. It's just been absolutely incredible. But to go back to your question, how did it all start for me? My military career started back in 1997. I joined the Marine Corps, which has a little bit of a story in itself. My mom said, "Is this something that you really wanted to do?" And I was 17 years old. I didn't want to go to college. It wasn't something that I had in my plans. I was growing up in North Carolina. My junior senior year, I was ditching school to go fishing and hunting, and so I didn't really want to do any more of that school stuff. And so I was like, yeah, I want to join the military, and I think the Marine Corps is calling to me, And she's like, well, if this is something you want to do, I want to take you somewhere. And what she did is she took me up to Washington, D.C. during Memorial Day weekend. If you've ever been there during that time period, you got all the Vietnam veterans that come through town. Watching 68,000 bikers drive down Pennsylvania Avenue was absolutely breathtaking. And, she took me to the Vietnam Wall. And that was really the first time I've ever saw my mother cry in, like, real heartbreak. And, and what she was doing is, she went to the book and, found a bunch of her high school schoolmates and then went to the wall and copied all of the names from that wall. And she was in absolute tears, and that really struck me, hard. And on the way back home, she asked me the question again. She's like, "Is this something that you really want to do?" And I said, "Mom, after watching, what just occurred while we were up there in D.C., I'm absolutely invested." And so I made the leap. Went to Parris Island. Spent some time in the sand pits down there, and it was a belligerent little bastard. And
Parris is East Coast, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So that's South
Carolina. Yep.
All right. So tell me a little bit about that, because I don't know much about. I know you have Parris, or what's West Coast?
San Diego. Okay. So the median line is right down the Mississippi, and if you're on that side, you can go to, or you will go to Parris Island, and everything west goes to San Diego, and there's always that rivalry.
So that's how they split. They split it based on recruits.
Right.
Okay, I didn't know if it was split based on
a
MLS.
region. It's more a region, right? And so I had the opportunity to go to Parris Island, which was everything that I expected to be. Watching all that Full Metal Jacket stuff and getting all mentally prepped and hearing all the stories from when I was in the delayed entry program. It was everything that they said it was going to be. And when you make that drive across the causeway and you're coming into the recruit depot in the middle of the night on the bus, you're like, "What? I just made the worst decision of my life."
I bet. Yeah, 97. You still had real boot camp.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I could tell you stories of being in the big gear locker and getting corrected. But so I did that, and so the land of the sand flea was a.
Did you pick an MOS going in?
So I did. I originally picked infantry. I got knocked out of that, and then they put me into mechanized infantry. So my original MOS was 1833 Amtracs, and went through Parris Island, graduated. Nothing special there. I didn't want to be the lead, the guide. I didn't want to be the top recruit. It seemed like a lot of skylining yourself. I was more the guy that was making jokes on the line and being punished on the quarterdeck every night, and in the Drill Sergeant LaSalle's House of Pain, and that was a lot of fun. But after that, I went to San Diego, Camp Peloton, Camp Del Mar was where our schools battalion was. Spent some time over there doing the Amtrak training, which was rather interesting. Taking a 26-ton vehicle that is not meant to float off into the ocean, driving off the back of a ship. So that was really interesting and really eye-opening. And it was probably. Yeah, everybody will say that their battalion was the worst, but I thought that the Amtrak's really sucked. And so spent some time there. Got out of the Marines in 2001. Moved back to Chicago, where all my family was residing at the time, and got into the unions there. September 11th happened, and I was like, "Well, shit, I'm not a Marine anymore. What the hell? We're going to combat, So I started the whole reenlistment process into a reserve unit up here in Chicago that I became particularly fond of. It was 2nd Battalion, 24th Marines. I was part of the weapons company. And I first started out with the I&I staff because I was not an 0311. And I found out they're deploying. I'm like, "Hey, I don't care what needs to be done. Make me an 0311. Do whatever needs to be done. I want to go on this deployment." And so they moved me over, started the OJT process, and while we were doing ILOC in California, I got cross-trained into the infantry side. I got to climb all the hills that were all the Marines talk about on the West Coast. I wasn't really impressed. I thought Parris Island was far more difficult. Climbing a couple hills, you guys got it made. Tried living in the sand fleas and 110-degree heat,
prickly heat.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. So it was a lot of fun. But we deployed to the northern Babel province of Iraq in 2004. I was on the Advon team, and we were responsible for doing the ripping out 2-2. We were in the Triangle of Death, Mahmadiyah, and it was a lot of fun. We part of my job when I was deployed, they took the CAT teams and they really didn't know what to do with a lot of the 81s, the assault men and all these different MOSs. So they made these unique things called mobile strike teams. And what we were charged to do was during the day do harassment and interdiction, just go around looking like soft targets and get into a lot of gunfights. And then at night, when the line units were out doing their stuff and collecting intelligence, they would work target packages and give it to us to go do these HVT hits, which was, I got to say, some of the greatest things that I've ever been a part of. But so we from September to December, it was back in 2004. It was a hell fight. We participated.
We were in a war.
Yeah, it was the war, right? There were very little ROEs. We were supporting Phantom Fury, so we did a lot of work on the Euphrates, holding the line there as all of the Marine battalions in the Army were pushing through Fallujah. They were pushing. We were the trapdoor, catching all the fighters coming back over the river. And it was a hellacious gunfight nearly every day. I mean, we were one of the first battalions in Iraq to have a force-on-force contact, where my platoon of 30 Marines took on a group of 200 fighters, which we later learned to be Zarqawi doing a head planning in our town.
Oh, wow.
And we got ambushed earlier in the morning. We came back to recon the area to see what was really going on, and spoiled a huge ambush that they were planning and took on 200 fighters. We decimated more than half of their fighters and really kicked their ass.
I guess it's true what they say about Marines, huh?
It was a glorious day.
Bring 200 more of your best, because 30 of us just chewed you up.
It was great. I got some amazing pictures of us with all the RPKs and all their weapons. I remember one particular instance. I'm hooking up tow chains to a meat wagon that put itself into a canal, and this guy comes over firing RPGs at us and just bouncing off everything, because we spoiled their ambush. So they're not even arming these things; they're just firing hot steel at you, right? And I don't know if you've ever saw it, but what a Mark 19 does to a man under 14 feet is absolutely impressive.
I have not seen that, but God, I want to.
The closest thing I can relate it to is Blaine getting ripped open in Predator. And it was amazing. Then it followed up by the VC throwing a grenade out the top of the hatch. So it was really good. But after all that, come back to the States. I had the opportunity to go on another deployment, but it was to Haditha in 2006, and it was more fob security. I'm like, I'm a warfighter. I don't guard fobs.
Until you heard what happened in Haditha.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit later than the time that I was there. But from all my friends that were on that deployment, they really didn't do anything to the operational capacity that we were doing earlier. So I lucked out. It
changed a lot. And when I was an instructor teaching young TAC P students, even from 2008 to 12, I'd have to explain to them, you're going to fight a different war than I fought, because it's different now. It's no longer a go out and pick a fight.
Yeah.
And that's what it used to be. Go out. What are we doing today? We're going to go out and fuck with people until they shoot at us.
Right. It was the greatest of times, I got to say.
Wait, what? There's a no roll? We're just chasing headlights and shooting them?
Right. When I'm out and doing all these grunt style things, and I come across an OIF 2 Tech 2 person, we share some of the craziest stories. It's like, oh man, that was the real war.
So you come back. You didn't go on that deployment. What were you doing? What were you doing then?
I went back to my union carpentry job. Throwing up flooring in sky rises downtown Chicago, and
sounds like a good skill to have.
It was good. I mean,
as a homeowner,
Yeah, exactly. I didn't have to pay people a contract for my house anymore. I was always getting new floor to put in my home that just happened to fall off the back of a truck.
Yeah, we'd get a little extra with one of these buildings. I mean, who's going to miss 4,000 ssquare feet?
Right, exactly. I mean, but so it was fun. But you know what? It didn't have the same allure that I had. When I first went into carpentry before I went on the deployment, it was new and it was exciting, right? But coming back from combat, I'm like, everything is dull. There's just nothing more that excites me.
Now, for me, just personally, a job like that, it would mess with me psychologically, because no matter how hard you work and you finish one floor, you start all back over the next day.
There's 60 more of those.
One floor up, and it's like, and then you finish a building, and you have this thing of accomplishment, and it's like, well, tomorrow we're on that one, and we're on the first floor, and we do
great job
more.
security.
But it's just like your sense of accomplishment is always fucked with.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's just never over.
Yep. And what I've always found is that I would walk into these new buildings I go up, and I didn't do, and I'd find myself looking at the floor, picking out stuff. I'm like, oh, that looks like that's terrible. The craftsmanship is shit here.
Yeah, who'd you hire? Come in here and rip these out. I'm doing them over.
So, so I with all that in mind, I started really struggling, and started drinking, started getting into drugs. Lost a lot of myself. A couple of my friends were dying from a lot of the problems that they had, and then some health issues from the burn pits, and then people just making careless mistakes and getting themselves killed. And that started really messing with my mind. And went to the VA. They got me on the cocktail of drugs, and I was on the Zoloft, Trazodone, all that.
Just get them out of here. Come on,
you'll be fine. These are just bad
suck
memories.
These down.
Yeah. So that's when things really spun out of control. I lost my marriage, lost my house, lost my children, and that was a very, very difficult time for me, to the point where I had a gun in my mouth and I was going to commit suicide, and that was a very difficult thing for me. But the savior of it is I couldn't bring myself to do it because of my relationship with my children, even as fractured as it was, and my mental state that I was in. The thought of them growing up without a father who bowed out because he couldn't handle his own situation just didn't sit well with me.
And you just become that one line in their life.
Yeah.
Oh, my dad committed suicide.
Exactly.
And if you think about that, like, that's what your life reduced to. That
Absolutely.
one line.
Absolutely. And I didn't want to be that story. And I didn't want to be another statistic for the VA to say, whatever their explanation is these days. Because every day it seems like there's something new that they're coming out with. So I stopped the medication immediately. I stopped the medication after I woke up nearly 100 miles away from my house in a blackout, saying, how the hell did I get to Portage, Indiana? So I stopped all that, quit my job at the union, and challenged myself to do something different. And during that time, I was moonlighting as a bouncer, which was a lot of fun because my pent up rage and anger that I didn't have an outlet for.
Where can I just throw some people around,
right, and not get arrested? I took a job bouncing at the bar, and doing all that, and that was a lot of fun. It was an outlet. I had the opportunity, or more the challenge, to help clean up a bar that was a biker bar that was full of cocaine, and I think I did a pretty damn good job and built a reputation for myself doing that. Exercised on the post 9/11 GI Bill, put myself through college, and got myself a degree. I got a bachelor's degree in creating video games. Which I never really followed through with.
So interesting. But that could come later.
Yeah.
When you've got time.
That's right. That's right.
It's definitely a skill. You could just sit on for a while.
Yeah.
And go, you know what? I'm going to create an app.
Yeah, exactly. And I may not have exercised it in creating video games, but the creative side, I did publish 7 comic books. I was guest artist at C2E2 Chicago.
Have you ever been to Triarch's headquarters?
No, I have not.
I would love to take you there because it is fascinating. The guys responsible for Call of Duty like to go through the way that they're organized in there is so cool. Like, because you have an entire division that's just the landscapes.
Right.
So you have these giant walls of this it's almost like 40 feet long, and it's each level.
Oh, geez.
Like, and it's everything down to the flower pot, to the plants, to everything, and it's like super cool because like, especially with your background there, Like I was just stunned. Like they're the gun division. They have a giant gun wall of airsoft, every airsoft gun ever made. And those guys sitting there and they're just 3D modeling guns and actions and animations and how the round ejects out. And it's just like, this is cool.
Yeah, and a lot of people are really unnecessarily ignorant to like how the asset creation really goes, how much work goes into it. Just like modeling a gun could take a month, 2 months, just to get the model, then you
shading
skin it,
and
all that,
and the texturing, and
then you get the
like
animation on it. Oh, it's unbelievable.
I spent hours yesterday diving down Element 3D, which is a plugin for After Effects, and it's just, you get lost.
Yeah.
And then you realize you've only traveled this far.
Right. Yeah.
You're like, that was 7 hours of my time, and I didn't learn shit.
Right. How can I make money on this? Yeah, it's fascinating. It's like 3D Max, Blender.
And that's, yes. I mean, I started, this is a funny story because in our high school, the first year that they offered a new class called web page design. Well, I took that because at that point I had built 4 or 5 different pages using GeoCities and AngelFire, and a book, that taught me HTML that I taught myself, and all these things. So when I got into that class, the teacher himself really didn't know web design that much, and he was just going off a book with Microsoft Front Page because Front Page had just come out.
Right.
This is the year 2000, and so he, when he saw my skills, he essentially offered, okay, show the class and help us kind of move along with this coding stuff, and then you use the school to get licenses for software that you could never get and figure this stuff out. So I was messing around with Blender and Bryce and Poser 4.
Oh, geez,
and
all that early stuff.
Yeah, like Blender, like back in the day, you could get on those message boards and forums in like the year 2000 and look at what you could do in Blender.
Yeah,
and it was still like you would spend 4 days on something and it would be a furry animal with eyes, like a dust bunny.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating, and I truly enjoyed it. It's something that hopefully I can revisit later in life. But what that ultimately did for me was open the door to grunt style. As I was trying to find a job after I graduated school, I was still doing the comic books, and I had a business doing that in a studio in Aurora. It was pretty awesome. Had a couple of artists there, and put out 7 comic books. But my wife was like, "Hey, Tim, it's not making money. You need to go find a real job." I'm like, "This is a real job. What are you talking about?" So I started going around and got turned down from all these places to the point where I was going to like Toys R Us to go work on a warehouse floor, right? And they're like, "No, you're overqualified. You blah 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 blah." I'm like, "It's $10 an hour. Just give me a job." I'm like, "No." So I found this. I'm cruising Craigslist for local job opportunities, and I see this ad for a designer for grunt style, and I'm like, grunt style, that sounds interesting. And I'm reading more of it, and it's military, veteran-owned, veteran-operated business, blah blah blah. In the art apparel, I needed a designer. I'm like, I can do all this, right? So I set up an interview. I go to see Daniel, the CEO, the founder, and I bring my portfolio. I walk in. I'm like, man, this is exciting. Look at all this great stuff. I can feel the energy. And then I sit down with Dan, and I show him all my stuff. He's like, "Oh, this is all great, but this is not what I'm looking for." I'm like, "You son of a bitch.
Like, I can do that. Like, if I could do this,
right.
Like, somebody that can draw comic books can draw a T-shirt.
Right, exactly. And he's like, "Well, I'm looking for this." I'm like, okay. So I walk out with my head down. And I'm driving home, and I'm like thinking to my wife, what the hell am I going to tell her? This is the last opportunity I really had. And phone rings. I look up, and it's Daniel. I'm like, well, this is interesting. So I take it, and he's like, "Hey, I was thinking about it. I really need you on my team and somebody of your skill set. And I know you're really interested in this design position, but I have another opportunity." And I was like, "Well, okay, what is it?" And he's like, "Well, I have a position folding shirts." I'm thinking to myself, well, that doesn't sound very glorious, but I need to go home with a job. So I was like, okay, I'll take it. Didn't even ask what the pay was, right? And he tells, just report here on Monday when comfortable clothes. I'm like, okay, cool. And so I do that, go home to my wife. She's excited. Go back Monday, find out it's a $10 an hour job. I'm like, whatever, that's cool. And that really started the whole adventure. So I went from folding shirts to being a press operator, lead press operator, production manager, operations manager, to chief operating officer and now partner. And over the last 5 years, we've been really heavily involved in the expansion and the growth and bringing all the talent.
You remember what it was like though when all you had to worry about was how many shirts you folded?
Oh God,
the quality of life.
every day.
When all you had to do was shoot the shit with your buddies,
right? 40 hours a week. I dream for those days. Now, if I don't do 80, I feel like I'm cheating the company.
But that's a testament to the leadership style over there. Like, because you know now what the trick was.
Mm-hmm.
You said in the interview that you wanted to work and you were motivated,
mm-hmm.
and Dan gave you the sweep the floor job. Okay,
mm-hmm.
well, do you want to sweep the floors? And if you were too good for that, then you're not going to be good on this team.
Absolutely.
And you took it.
Yeah.
And the reward behind that was he gave you a path to become a partner.
Yep, absolutely.
That's amazing.
And exactly what you're saying. I think where a lot of people fail in today's economy is that they don't want to take risk, right? And secondly, they don't want to take responsibility.
It's a lot of hot air,
right?
Like I said, how many times have you sat across that desk with an interviewee and he's saying, "I'll do anything to work for you." Great. I need somebody to take out that trash. Well, I don't want to do that.
Right. I'm too good for that.
Okay. Well,
you see my resume?
You just told me.
Exactly. I left. When I left the union, I was making well over $100,000 doing that. It was a great job, right? But it wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want to follow that. I didn't want to be on my knees laying floor until I was 55 to collect a great retirement. It didn't seem exciting to me, But I was motivated, and I think that when an opportunity presented itself at Grunstyle, I jumped on it like a grenade, and I owned it and went with it. Yeah, never asked the question. Dan said, "Hey, I need this. Hey, roger that. I'll get it done." And I think that mentality really got me where I am.
That first interaction stuck with him as a CEO.
Yeah.
Knowing that the day that he said, "Okay, you don't get the design job, but you could fold T-shirts," and you said yes. Yeah. That is probably a real reason why you're in the position you're in.
I think so. I absolutely think so. And we've created a wonderful relationship over the last 5 years working together, and I couldn't be more blessed. What I thank Dan for every day, being a sergeant in the Marine Corps was one of the most fantastic accomplishments of my life, and being in the position where I get to lead people again, I thank Dan every day for that opportunity, and I take it very serious to the point where, for all you Marines out there, you walk into a duty hut, and it's in every duty hut across the globe. It says, "A Marine on duty has no friends." I walk into Grunstyle every day because with that mentality, I'm here to conduct business. You're not my friends. I love all of you. I will go to battle for all of you, but we're here to make money and service the customer.
Exactly. So here's a question I have for you, because this is something that we struggle with sometimes, and I want to hear how you kind of deal with it. And you, as a creative person and as a personality for Grunstyle, that is the personality in the videos and things like that, how do you keep your creativity when you're so bogged down with the headache of operations? And you guys are 500 plus people, right?
Yeah.
So how are you able to separate that and keep because I know it bogs me down, and it bogs Matt down, it bogs Evan down, and that's why there's so much gap now between our joint productions where all of us are together in a video, because we're all just eaten up with the business, and it kind of stumps the ideas sometimes.
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think a lot of people, not only you guys struggle with that, I think a lot of businesses struggle with that. And one of the things that I've done to really put myself in a position that I can still keep that creative side of me, but still focus on the strategic and tactical sides of the business, is I fire myself from jobs. Right? There are things that I have come across in the 5 years of doing business that I've come to a point in saying, I don't need to do this anymore. I'm firing myself from this job. I'm going to hire somebody that can do it better than me, and I'm going to surround myself with people that are better than me, right? In a lot of areas. So like from my production side to my manufacturing side to product development and all that, these are people that are extraordinary in their capabilities. I have understanding and I can do all those jobs, but I can't do them all at one time. And if I tried, I would be shortchanging the company and not really setting the company up for success. And it would, limit my ability to be creative. So, that old saying of, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, it holds a lot of value. And, and it's hard for a lot of people to come to that point of really saying, I need to fire myself from a position, because now you're relinquishing parts of control, and, it's a whole human psyche where now you're putting trust in another individual.
If you're robbing yourself from what you're best at, though, you're
failing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So again, it's like you may, I may have the ability to cut photos out in Photoshop, but is that a good use of my time? Mm-hmm. Or would it be to hire somebody to do all the cutouts, and then I'll put the final ad together?
Right. Yeah. And it's an excellent point. And I read a lot of business books. I try to educate myself in a lot of different things. But I read a statement not too long ago that said, if you're an executive and 80% of your time is not focused on the things that you do best, you are failing.
Core competency.
Yeah.
Competency.
Absolutely.
Good to great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jim Collins.
Yes. Yeah.
Big fan.
It's an eye-opening book, and to all you out there, we've talked about it before. Good to Great. They take 10 companies from the mid '80s. Well, they do it over. It's not a specific time frame, but they take them 20. They look at them at 20 years,
right.
and what did they do? And what did these companies do in that span of 20 years that made them great companies? And his big foot stomping item throughout that whole book is focus on your core competencies.
Mm-hmm. And putting right people on the bus.
Yes,
right?
The right people on the bus, because that's what will carry you.
Yep. You know as well as I do that culture is a huge thing, right? And if you put somebody into your culture that doesn't necessarily blend with it and can carry that bucket, they have the potential of pissing in the punch bowl, if you will, and ruin everything. So it's very interesting.
Well, so a lot of our listeners for this show are interested in starting businesses or getting into coming out of the military and things like that. What is your one takeaway that you would give them whether they're job searching or going out to follow an idea that they have?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that for veterans, we all walk out of the military because we were conditioned to think that we're only competent, like infantry, that I can be a cop or I can be a security guard, I can go do some agency work, whatever that case may be. I think the biggest thing that veterans should really understand when you're going out into the job force, be it if you're just getting out or if you've been out for some time, is capitalize on your strengths. Every one of you is a planner. Every one of you knows how to strategize. Everyone knows how to put together an operation order and how to execute on something. If you can focus on those, you're going to be successful in whatever business that your endeavors are. If you're going to work for someone else or if you're going to set something up for yourself.
My biggest thing that I've had is when people talk, like, really corner me for advice, or and I see, a lot of times I see people, that are complaining, or they say you were lucky, and my answer was, I wasn't lucky. I just never quit.
Right.
Like, I mean, it took me, I've been filming videos on the weekends and in the yard and with Dave and shit like that for the last 14 years.
Right.
Like, and it wasn't until the last 5 I found the people that belonged on the bus and really pushed it forward, and we got to do a lot of cool things. But my big thing to some of these guys is, what did you do today to push forward? Right. And it's as small as that. What did you do today? Mm-hmm. Because 5 to 8 years ago, I had this thing where every day I would watch a Photoshop or editing tutorial, one a day. I just had to sit down and do one a day. I need to learn something about graphics or video editing once a day. Yep. And that was pushing me towards the goal of making a movie.
Absolutely. Discipline, right?
Yes.
Having self-discipline in everything that you do. I think, again, that's something that is intrinsic to all of us that are cut from this cloth, is that discipline is beaten into us, regardless if we like it or not. You're gonna learn it.
I see vets lose that, though.
Yeah.
Like, where is they were one way in the military. They knew that they had to maintain a physical standard, so they did PT every morning. They knew they had to get certain training accomplished, and they would do that. But then they get out, and they just stop.
Yeah, well,
and it's like
it's different when you have to hold yourself accountable, right? Whereas you're being held accountable by authority, but now that authority is you, and if you can't, meet the expectations of yourself and your own standard,
you were taught the formula.
Right.
Use it.
Exactly. It's like everything else.
Use it on yourself,
right? Just like everything you learn in school, you're given the basic tools. It's how you use those tools, to better yourself.
So, how can people find you on social media?
There's a lot of ways. Obviously, going to Grunt Style, Grunt Style Facebook page. There's Grunt Style First Sergeant, Grunt Style 1SG on Facebook, Grunt Style 1SG on Instagram, Grunt Style 1SG.com is the recent page we put together. So there's a lot of ways you can find out what the character of the First Sergeant is always getting into. And then obviously check out gruntstyle.com. A lot of great product out there. And if you guys haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to go check it out. But a lot of great things coming down in the future. We have, what inclined me to move down to San Antonio was setting up our first manufacturing facility. So we take product from a raw material state on a fabric roll, and then we produce a button-up long sleeve shirt, short sleeve shirt, and all these different items that we're doing made right here in America. And that's really towards that long-term 2018 strategy that Grunt Style has this year is converting all of our product to 100% made in America. I know that a lot of people out there are really asking for it, and it's hard to come by.
It's hard to do.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing we see. People will pull one of our cups or something and go, oh, it's made in China. Sorry, brother, but no one in the United States manufactures that cup.
Absolutely.
Or that style or using that material. Like, you just can't find it anymore.
And I always make the joke, I'm like, oh, you're complaining to me on that Chinese-made cell phone that you have in your hand.
Yeah, on the Chinese-made car that you're driving.
Right. Exactly. So you shut the fuck up. But seriously, I mean,
it's a PETA person yelling at you from a beamer.
Yeah. Exactly.
Fur is murder. Yep. Yeah, well, so are your seats.
Absolutely. It's the dichotomy is pretty hilarious, right? And but you're absolutely right. It's been very difficult. I didn't know how difficult it was until really researching it. When I was building this facility, I was calling around to all these different manufacturers. And they're telling me, I'm like, hey, how long does it take to produce a shirt like this? In like 15, 18 months. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have that kind of time. I'm like, what do you think I am? I'm like, well, that's a whole concept strategy from ideation to final product. I'm like, that's full of shit. I don't know how you guys make money, but that's not how we're making money. And I was like, I guarantee you I'll have it done in 60 days. And 3 vendors.
So what you're telling me is Article 15 can start buying American-made shirts. And offering a new line.
I think that we may have a deal in the making, ladies and gentlemen.
I love it. Well, there's so many cool things happening. We've got stuff in development between, all of our businesses now that we're neighbors. Great insight on Grunt Style, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Jensen from Grunt Style. If you want to hit them up, gruntstyle.com or Grunt Style 1SG on Instagram. This is Launch Code.